wrapped on the year of FDS, put everything away, put all of my data files into deep storage, and then a commenter on my video, BriarEos200, reminded me of the existence of one of the strangest semi-official Famicom Disk System games. And I thought, yeah, that's too good of a topic not to talk about it. So here we go, squeezing in at the last minute, Wakusei Aton Gaiden. An obscure game of mysterious origins that few have ever seen, let alone played. We know who published it, Wakusei, a company you'll have never heard of because they're not a company. However, their official English name will tell you who they are, the National Tax Agency. Yes, the Japanese equivalent of the IRS published a Famicom Disk System game. We know it was a licensed game because Nintendo has a record of that, but we don't know who developed it. It might have even been Nintendo themselves. The next question is, why did the National Tax Agency decide to publish a mediocre shoot-'em-up? And that requires a little bit more explanation. For that, you need to understand that the National Tax Agency is a government agency, and those are similar the world over. One of their mandates was educating the populace about taxes, and they created appealing-sounding things like Kurashito Zeikin Ten, or the Your Taxes and Life exhibition. It was a public outreach program in 1990 as part of Zeoshiro Shukan, or Tax Awareness Week. I know, these sound like real parties, don't they? And you know what kids were into in 1990? Video games. Of course, in 1990, the video games the kids were into were RPGs, but don't expect a government agency to stay on top of trends like that. And speaking of being behind on trends, they copied Hudson's Summer Caravan, a yearly video game competition that Hudson put on. So for 1990's Tax Awareness Week, kids could go to their local tax office, any one of 517 locations, and play Planet Aton Gaiden. And of course, they were competing for the highest score. I haven't been able to dig up whether or not there was any prize, but since we're talking about a government agency, I wouldn't have expected much. As far as I can tell from official sources, Wakusei Aton Gaiden was never distributed. You couldn't go to your local disc writer kiosk and get a copy made for you. The copies made for the National Tax Agency were the only ones. So there's a minimum of 517 of them, but probably not more than a couple thousand copies. And once Tax Awareness Week was over, they seem to have just gotten handed out to whoever wanted them, which is why it can still be played today. There's also the question of the title. Since Gaiden is side story, that implies the existence of a main story for Wakusei Aton Gaiden. And that also exists. You see, one of the initiatives of the National Tax Agency at that point was bringing themselves into the era of AV, reaching out to people with videos, not just pamphlets and forms. And so they commissioned a series of animated short films called Wakusei Aton. I confirmed the existence of 2 of them because I could find pictures of the covers. But as far as I can tell, they've never been preserved or uploaded to the internet, because saving cartoons produced by the taxman to tell kids to pay their taxes is kind of a low priority for most people. These videos were 15 minutes long and seemed to be the kind of thing that your teacher would show when they were too hungover to teach. The concept of the videos is that Kanta is an Earth boy at a summer camp who gets abducted by a UFO and taken to the planet Aton, a libertarian paradise where they have no taxes at all. Turns out that actually didn't really work out for them, and so Kanta has to teach Princess Yuri of Planet Aton the importance of taxes. Planet Aton Gaiden takes place after that, because now all of the taxes have been stolen by an invader and divvied up among his many ships. Kanta and Yuri hop into space fighters to go get the money back. The game is a very slow-paced shoot-'em-up, though you can at least hold down the A button to fire continuously. Enemies very slowly come out, get hit, and you see how much cash they were carrying. If you get hit, then your ship becomes damaged, and you go from firing 2 shots at once to just firing 1 shot. If you get hit again, nothing happens. This is a promotional game, they're not going to make it tough. There are 3 power-ups you can get in Wakusei Aton Gaiden. All of these come in the form of ships that slowly drift up from the bottom of the screen, and you get the power-up by touching them. The ship with the little diamond-ish pattern attaches to the front of your ship and becomes a shield. It lasts for about 15 seconds and then flies off again. The ship with the square pattern is a bomb that destroys all enemies on the screen, not that there are ever that many enemies on the screen. And finally, the cross will restore your ship if it's been damaged, taking you back from 1 shot to 2. Periodically, you'll stop and have to answer a question about finance. And while it's always tough for me to judge the questions, I have read that even adults could find these to be confusing. You answer the questions by shooting down the little ship, and you get some points if you succeed. Once you've cleared 10 questions, the game is over. It's a process that only takes about 8 or 9 minutes. The game was for a public exhibition after all, so they had to quickly cycle through all of those kids lined up to play the tax game. At the end, you got a report based on your score, letting you know where those recovered taxes went to on planet Aton. There was also a 2-player simultaneous mode, and in this mode, when the questions come up, the player who gets to answer is the player who most recently shot down a ship. The questions are worth 2,000 points to the 300 points that most ships are worth, so the questions don't actually make up a whole lot of your score. Now, even though they didn't publish any further games for the FDS, this was not the only time that the National Tax Agency dipped their toes into video games. There have been some promotional video games that they made, and then a couple of years ago, and then a few years ago, and a couple of years ago, they got some attention by releasing a video that appeared to be a video game commentary. The player had a point-and-click adventure game that they said they just found online, and as they poked around the office environment, they were surprised that it turned out to be a game about properly filing the main character's taxes. The game didn't actually exist, but it was a convincing fake of a low-end indie adventure game. In Japan, Wakusei Aton Gaiden is mainly known for that weird history behind it. Nobody actually seeks it out to play it. And yeah, even without the tax questions, there's nothing here worth checking out. It's a pretty bad shoot-'em-up, though according to the National Tax Agency themselves, it was, quote, well received. The best thing about Wakusei Aton Gaiden is the story behind it. And really, you don't need anything else.